Alrighty, so today, I thought I wanted to do one live stream to cover all of the political issues recently that have come out of some of the recent political violence. And I was thinking, like, I'm gonna do a live stream to address this. And then I've been realizing, I don't think I can do a single live stream to address it, because well, we all know I have some anger management issues. I struggle with my emotional regulation, and I'm also just not socially acceptable in general. And I was trying to put together some words about this, just even posting about it in general, and everything that I ended up typing out to say, it's just all stuff that is definitely going to get me banned on any platform, and probably shut down and silenced. And it's just a situation where anything I say, I know that I will have to then deal with the emotional labor of the issues from it. And I know that is part of doing the work, But there comes times in your life where you have to recognize what you need to do for your own self-care and mental health, or you won't be able to continue doing any work, right? So the way I felt like I should address this then, so that I still feel I'm addressing it while doing it in a way that accommodates where I'm at in my life right now, I'm gonna do this in multiple videos. And the reason being is I feel like if I just take time to explain facets of my logic over time, then it's not a single video of rage, but it's a puzzle, and each video is like a piece of the puzzle. When you look at it all together, you can see, what it is. And so I think that's how I'm going to approach it. And so this first example, we're going to be using deaf issues because it's Deaf Awareness Month right now. The captioner is putting dead or death again for deaf, but whatever. We're used to that. It should be DEAF. Fuck it. But anyway, so we're going to be going over some videos basically about this situation where it was a trend about 2 years ago. It was a trend on TikTok. I saw it a lot. But I saw it on other platforms, but I just mainly saw it kind of blow up on TikTok. And I addressed a person that I saw get the most clout from it, And so I had that conversation with him, and so we'll go over that. And so we're going to watch some videos, and then we're going to go over the sources that I used in those videos, and we'll wrap up for this live stream for this. And then in my conclusion, I'll also discuss how this example relates to current political issues as well, like why I'm using this as an example for that. We'll talk about that. I'll probably end up talking about it as we go, but I plan to kind of show you all of this and then further discuss that at the end. So yeah, so I'm so sorry, I'm out of it. I've had a week, but whatever, we're here now. So anyway, we're gonna go over some past videos that I did. I did these videos about 2 years ago. I can't remember how much context I put in the videos at the time of what it was, so I'll try to add that as we go. So I might be over explaining it, but whatever. And then we're gonna go through some of the materials. I might not read. I don't really plan on reading all of the sources that I've posted, because then we'll be here all day. But I'm just gonna show you each source and discuss why it's relevant to these videos and to the situation. And then we're gonna wrap that bitch up from here, and I'll try to keep it as focused on all of this as I can, because we know how I am, if you've been watching me. Anyway, and I also kind of, approached they were making some jokes about us, so I made some jokes too when it came to deaf versus hearing people. So we'll see that, as it relates. And I also did a mashup song related to the situation. And I want to apologize in advance for the mashup song because of how flat it is and out of key and everything. But that's not the point. I hope it's still entertaining nonetheless, even if it's not the best like musical song. I hope you still get the point of it. And so, I'm gonna end up playing that twice because I'm gonna show you how it was published in its original context, and I'll also play it again at the end of this video too. But yeah, I might hold that till after the conclusion, or I can't decide, but we'll see when I end up playing it. Anyway, I'm gonna roll my intro, and then we're actually gonna get into this bitch. Yeah. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexie or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. Okay, so first up, what we're going to be doing is looking at the very first video that I ever did on this. I'm just realizing I don't think my captioner, oh no it does. Every time I don't know what it is, but this captioner, every time I go like on play a buffer or like I stop speaking for a second and then I start speaking again, for some reason I don't feel like it recognizes my voice the first few times that I'm speaking again, and it'll be like a delay between the captioner working again and when I've been speaking, and that's been bothering me. But anyway, so if y'all see me weird when that happens, that's why. So basically, what we're about to watch now is the first video that I did on this as a response to the main video. I believe it was the first video that I saw on this and the biggest one that I saw on this, but I did see other creators do this too, in terms of the views and the clout that it got. So we're going to look at my first response and reaction. I believe, if I'm not wrong, that in this video that it's going to show first the initial skit that upset me that different people did that this creator is doing. And in this video too, when they're making fun of the deaf person, one thing that bothers me is they like imitate as if a deaf person were picking their nose or something, or like a deaf person wouldn't be able to comprehend what is happening, things like that. And then another thing too is people make fun of deaf people for screaming if we can't hear, as if we don't have emotions, as if they haven't made us speak anyway. Like a lot of things. So it's the way they dehumanize deaf people and then laugh about it was very triggering for me. And so my response, may not be something that is socially acceptable to you, but it's how I responded because of the way I'm able to cope with this situation because of our realities. So yeah, anyway, let's do it. When hearing people make deaf jokes. Isn't it hilarious how we just fucking kill you guys? You don't think you guys dying is funny? You have no sense of humor. I'm just edgy. You don't think it's funny that I make fun of sign language? But we tried to ban you from using it. That's what makes it so funny. I don't know why you're so mad about killing deaf people. It's not life or death. Millions of people liked it when I made fun of genocide and eugenics against deaf people. It's called inclusivity to laugh at killing you. Isn't it hilarious that hearing people forced us to be oral and then laugh at us for the idea of screaming if we are shot at? Oh yeah, so I don't feel like I explained it right in this video, but at the beginning, so he was imitating like when you're deaf during a school shooting was the concept of the video. And so, like I was saying, he imitated a deaf person picking their nose and scratching their head, and then was imitating the deaf person being shot at, and then the deaf person screaming, and then he captioned it why he screamed though. So yeah. As if we don't have emotions, and do not get me started on how that skit is not funny. And also, you know, with TikTok, sometimes if you stitch something afterwards, the voice doesn't align with the video. So I saw that. Oops, whatever. So yeah, that was, you know. And in here, whenever I was showing screenshots of sources related to deaf shootings and things like that, we're gonna go over those sources and everything. So. But now we're gonna look at the next one where I tried having a conversation with the guy. And he said, tag me. Like if I made a video about him, he put tag me. When hearing people make fun of deaf people, part 2. Oh, there's nothing wrong with pretending to be deaf to make fun of killing deaf people. I love deaf people. Don't take me laughing about deaf people dying to heart. Laughing about how deaf people are killed by hearing people while excluding deaf people, portraying them in a derogatory way without any deaf representation or other deaf people involved is me including deaf people. I wouldn't cry about deaf people dying. I would understand that deaf people dying is a joke, whether it's funny or not. Making a skit about killing deaf people isn't directly making fun of the deaf community. You're trying your hardest to make me talking about deaf people about deafness. Deaf people should not go to comedy shows. Deaf people who don't laugh about being killed by hearing people should stay isolated from society because I'm in. So yeah, we're gonna go, I think the last thing got cut off, but I was gonna say because I'm inclusive. But yeah, so I'm gonna see if I can read those comments that he had said with the conversation. So, let's see, the captioner is in the way. Let's see if I can make that thing disappear. Does that disappear? Oh, no. When it disappears, it goes to a different one. So I can't read the first 2 comments here. But first it's got, but you can see where he says, like, I love deaf people. I think they're amazing people. This is just a skit. Don't take it to heart, was what he had said. Whenever deaf people was telling him it was offensive, and I wasn't the only deaf person, it was others. And then another deaf person said, so gross, and during Deaf Awareness Month too. And someone said, bet you dislike deaf people, please take it down. And these were not me, these were other deaf people actually. And what he said to another deaf person, which I called out to previously, was, so I can't have a deaf person in my skit. Next time I'll make it a person wearing headphones. But there was no deaf person in their skit. It was a hearing person making fun of deaf people. That's not actually having a deaf person in your skit. And then Papa Sean said, I wouldn't cry about it. I would understand that it's just a joke, whether it's funny or not. And this, what was a joke to him was the idea of killing a deaf person. And how deaf people behave during shootings, and the idea of degrading deaf people in general, as we just reviewed. And so the next thing, let's see. He said whenever another deaf person had talked to him about the comment of picking the nose, and the reason that those comments aren't in the screenshot was because I had blocked that person. Anyway, because that's Kathleen Brockway, the person that was trying to say that Native Americans didn't have our own sign language, and that American Sign Language has nothing to do with Indigenous genocide. I just realized that this has not been getting my captioner because I was in full screen. That's unfortunate for me. I am very much hoping that the captioner on my video is working. But basically I was just reading the comments in here so far. So hopefully you know what I was said, because all I was doing was reading the comments on here, which were on the screen. But anyway, I was just saying too, the only thing that I actually don't think was on the captioner when I realized it wasn't being captioned though was that I had blocked Kathleen Brockway because she was claiming that American Sign Language was not based off of Native American genocide, and she also claimed that Native Americans didn't have our own sign language, and my evidence of all of that is in the videos and the screenshots. Anyway, so those are the screenshots. He was basically he told Kathleen that when she was pointing out like how fucked up it was, you know, with the picking the nose commentary, how that makes us look, how that's part of degrading us in context of not including us, in context of making fun of the idea of us dying. He said, my bad, deaf people don't pick their noses, with a pencil writing emoji. And then he also said, it wasn't directly making fun of the deaf community. You're trying your hardest to make it about you or them. Just stop. And he has all of us deaf people telling him how wrong it is. But this is how all hearing people, in my experience, treat me and all deaf people when we let them know, hey, this is discrimination. That's how they all act. No hearing person has ever proven me wrong. I would love for you to, though. I really would. Anyway, so the next video coming up, it's I titled it "When Hearing People Get Called Out on Discrimination," and I'm responding to his comment that says, "You took the video the wrong way. That's your problem." When hearing people get called out on discrimination. Oh wow, are the deaf community calling me out? This is great, free promotion. I'm assuming you've never watched a comedy show. You wouldn't be able to handle it. I have dark humor. You'll get offended. You could have easily ignored my video then, since you're offended. Deaf people took my video about deafness the wrong way. Deaf people are the problem. I'm invested in this return on ad spend. Don't forget to tag me. I know the deaf community has a lot to say about this, so I'm gonna marinate that and then get back to you. You guys have fun now. I am open to learning. There's a first time for everything. You deaf people enjoy yourselves talking about how I'm laughing about you dying. I know I'm having fun. So yeah, let's see if I can read the screenshots. So I had told my deaf friend who made a video about this, I said, ooh, I just made a stitch for this coming out tomorrow. It's part of my shit hearing people do now. And Papa Sean said, tag me. And so that's where, in that other video we just watched, what I responded to when he said to tag him. And then Papa Sean also said, I really hope you don't go to comedy shows. As if we don't have a sense of humor. Let's see, this caption is blocking the next thing. Let's see if I can see it. Okay, I actually read it in the video. The next comment seems to be the, the next one is where he said, I'm assuming you've never watched a comedy show. You wouldn't be able to handle it, is what he said. And my deaf friend responded, I've watched several. I don't watch comedians whose idea of comedy is punching down though. And Papa Sean said, because you'll get offended. Could have easily ignored my video then, since you're offended. And because he's a hearing person making a video making fun of deaf people and about killing deaf people, telling deaf people that we are wrong for being upset about this video. What the fuck? And then, so my deaf friend said, because besides being gross, it's lazy and unoriginal. I chose to call out your ableism and your lie about loving deaf people instead. I just realized I think I said she because of my colonial ass, but I believe this person is non-binary if I'm not mistaken. What is wrong with me? So anyway, they said, you could have acknowledged that you did something gross. Instead, you're here doubling down and trying to pretend that I'm the problem here, right? And then on Instagram, I had also told in another conversation with deaf people, I said, I've got video responses coming tomorrow on this as part of my shit hearing people do series. And Papa Sean again said, tag me, I'm invested. And then I said, so that's why I said when you're invested on that return on ad spend. And I told Papa Sean, that's Papa Sean 33 or whatever was a creator that had done that skit. I said, when you make it here but don't delve deeper into this issue, please reconsider your stance. Most deaf people harmed in these issues are black. Deaf people are, for every one hearing person that experiences violence, 2 deaf people experience violence. Sources coming tomorrow in video. Sources will be linked on YouTube. I hope you look into it. 50% of deaf people killed by police are disabled. 5.7, I said 50% of deaf people. 50% of people killed by police are disabled, is what I meant to say. 5.7 million black people are killed each year, more than twice as many white people. The statistically laughs about black deaf people dying. I also said something else, but the captioner's here is in the way. Anyway. And so another person who is black and deaf had said, the mocking of deaf people is sickening. He shouldn't even be on social media. Deaf people have really fought hard for rights and are still fighting to this very day. Dude really thought this was okay to post. Like, bro, just disrespectful. So yeah. And then I'm just showing the same screenshot, I think, in the rest of this video. So yeah, we're gonna move on now. And in this video, it's gonna be my response. It's a longer one, it's 10 minutes. So in this video, I might have 2 captions on here. I might end up turning this one off and you know what? I think this one's automatically captioned, but if it's not, I had captioned this one, but if it's not, I'm gonna automatically caption it with YouTube. But Papa Sean had told me, because I told you I'm sorry, clearly that's not enough for you. And so we'll look at this video now. When hearing people apologize to deaf people. Hearing people, hey, I got you some tickets to see OutKast and Nirvana. It's going to be a great show, once in a lifetime. Here you go. Deaf people, oh wow, okay. That's interesting coming from you, thank you. All right, well, I guess I'll go. The concert. I'm sorry, deaf people. Oh, I am for real. I'm still laughing about how you died. I apologize a million times. What else should I be? All apologies. What jokes could I say? I want my lights to stay. What else could I write? Plus I stole that shine. What else should I be? All apologies. All aboard the toxic deaf joke train. Who gives a fuck about deaf discrimination? The toxic deaf joke train. This is my one-way ticket. I have no creation. The toxic deaf joke train. I can steamroll you like I have the numbers too. What is 15% of the people gonna do? You don't survive the joke's true, but hey, at least I'm having fun. Deaf people, what the Alexander Graham Bell was that? Now you might be thinking, if you're not deaf, where did AGB come from? But Alexander Graham Bell exploited deaf people to profit off of hearing clout as well. If you'll notice, our guy Papa Sean here has 2.8 million likes on his profile. You can also notice that over 2.2 million of those likes are from the video making fun of deaf people. Now remember, Papa Sean enacted a skit that he went viral for, where he joked about a deaf person dying in a shooting. Alexander Graham Bell used to make those jokes too. In fact, after getting sign language banned at the Milan Conference of 1880, Alexander Graham Bell wrote a whole book of jokes you would enjoy. It's called Memoir upon the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race. Now, in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell made the telephone, so all of the hearing people loved him. Then in 1880, he got sign language banned. Okay, then in 1883, he published this memoir and he gave a speech on it. Since these ideas are so fucking hilarious to you, I thought we could read some of these jokes together. Now stay with me for all of this. I'm going to show you how it connects at the end. So let's discuss some of the ideas AG promoted, all in good fun. There are good grounds for the belief that a thorough investigation of the marriages of the deaf and the influence of these marriages upon the offspring will afford a solution of the problem. To what extent is the human race susceptible of variation by selection? It is to be feared that the intermarriage of such persons would be attended by calamitous results to their offsprings. Every consideration of philanthropy, as well as the interests of congenitally deaf persons themselves, should induce their teachers and friends to urge upon them the impropriety of intermarriage. In a letter included in the memoir, it says, in regard to the marriage of deaf mutes with each other, if both the man and the woman are deaf from birth, there is very great danger. I should say a strong probability that some of the offspring will be born deaf. In the preceding chapters, I have shown that sexual selection is at work among the deaf and dumb, tending to produce the deaf variety of the human race. Those who believe as I do that the production of a defective race of human beings would be a great calamity to the world will examine carefully the causes that lead to the intermarriages of the deaf with the object of applying a remedy. It is a significant fact that before the deaf and dumb were educated, comparatively few of them married, and intermarriage, if it existed at all, was so rare as to be practically unknown. This suggests the thought that the intermarriages of the deaf and dumb have in some way been promoted by our methods of education. When we examine the subject from this point of view, a startling condition of affairs becomes apparent. You might be thinking, this is supposed to be a funny video, but trust me, I'm getting there. Alexander Graham Bell goes on to say, whatever the cause, it is certainly the case that adult deaf mutes are sometimes hampered by the instinctive prejudices of hearing persons with whom they desire to have business or social relations. Many persons have the idea that they are dangerous, morose, ill-tempered, etc. Then again, people do not understand the mental condition of a person who cannot speak and who thinks in gestures. He is sometimes looked upon as a sort of monstrosity to be stared at and avoided. His gesticulations excite surprise and even sometimes alarm in ignorant minds. In connection with this subject, I may say that as lately as 1857, a deaf mute was shot dead in Alabama by a man who was alarmed by his gestures. In fact, fallacies concerning the deaf and dumb are so common as to touch us all and to suggest the advisability of seriously examining the fundamental ideas we hold concerning them.
I think all will agree that the evidence shows a tendency to the formation of a deaf variety of the human race in America. What remedial measures can be taken to lessen or check this tendency? We shall consider the subject under two heads: repressive, preventative measures. The most promising method of lessening the evil appears to lie in the adoption of preventative measures. In our search for such measures, we should be guided by the following principle: determine the causes that promote intermarriages among the deaf and dumb, and remove them. Under repressive methods, they realize they don't think that they can ban us from having kids without it also impacting them. Having shown the tendency to the formation of a deaf variety of the human race in America and some of the means that should be taken to counteract it, I commend the whole subject to the attention of scientific men. So recap, Alexander Graham Bell developed the phone in 1873. In 1880, he got sign language banned at the Milan Conference of 1880. In 1883, he published Memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race, and he gave a speech on it. And then he went out of his way to try and ban deaf marriage and laid the groundwork for forced sterilization against deaf people. Then, in 1891, Alexander Graham Bell went to Gallaudet University, and he says, "I know that an idea has gone forth, and it is very generally believed by the deaf in this country that I want to prevent you from marrying as you choose. But it is not true. I have never done such a thing." Now, bringing it back around, a lot of what Papa Sean joked about is rooted in these ideas of eugenics and genocide against deaf people. And just like Alexander Graham Bell, he is benefiting off of deaf exploitation. He has been asked to take that video down and refuses because he cares more about having likes than not perpetuating genocide and eugenics ideology. Sometimes people discriminate and it doesn't make them a horrible person. Whoa. Sometimes people can discriminate and they're still a good person. Ask me, I know. Sometimes people can discriminate and you don't have to take discrimination and act like people who can't take a fucking joke about genocide. It is just your lives. Joke's on you guys. I'm a sensation. Sometimes people can discriminate. It doesn't mean that was an act of hate. Oh no. Sometimes people can discriminate and you can fucking let it go, 'cause we don't care so.
I'm muted, but god damn it, I fucking hate when I fucking realize I'm muted. Anyway, so let's see if we can read some of these screenshots here. What the fuck did this say? Hold up. Oh, it's blurry. Basically, he said, "I apologize. No more deaf jokes. Enjoy your day." And another deaf person said, "If you actually want to apologize, take your video down and do better in the future." I can't. Oh yeah, it says your vid is still pinned. And then Sean replied, "It was pinned like 2 weeks ago, but I apologized already." Let's see, can I improve the quality? Yeah. And then he says, "Enjoy," thumbs up emoji. And then somebody says, "And you can't unpin it." The fuck is the point of this comment? You just gotta be offensive? And then let's see if I can, oh, defensive, not offensive, my bad. Let's see. And then somebody said, "That's okay, you can unpin it today and delete it. Or do it the same video with an official apology, then delete the original one. Make it make sense, please. And Papa Sean responded, I'm not being defensive. I apologize. That's all, with a heart emoji. And then also said, makes perfect sense. I apologize. That's all. Heart emoji. Enjoy. Enjoy what, bitch? Anyway, and then, oh yeah. Someone said, and it's still pinned now. Do you need instructions on how to unpin a video? So let's see. And he said, if not, why is it still up? And then Sean said, because I told you I'm sorry. Clearly that's not enough for you. Because apologizing while still continuing to promote the rhetoric against us and the ideology against us is fucked up, man. And so somebody was basically said, your apologies are 100% performative, and you choose views over condemning a dangerous rhetoric. And Sean said, I have my top 3 best performing videos pinned. Let's see. And then for reading the quote, I'm going to show you the link. It's in the description of this video, and we'll go over it again later. But I did a live reading on that memoir. So go read that reading there. And I also did a reading on marriage and address to the deaf as well. And on a different platform, Sean was was repeating that narrative, like where people keep talking about the nose picking thing in relation to all of this, triggers our history of people degrading us. He keeps saying, so deaf people can't pick their nose? Sorry, I didn't know that. Type rhetoric. He's saying that again to more people. And another deaf person has said, you know that wasn't the intent. Look, now you are aware that this is offensive. You can choose to do better. I was trying to show. Oh well. Oh yeah, I skipped forward too far before. Okay, so my bad. I was trying to show it without the captioner, and then I thought I went too far forward, but it turns out anyway. So a deaf person said, it is not funny to mock deaf people. Take this down and try learning about their culture instead. And so Papa Sean said, not making fun of deaf people, never mentioned the entire community, just a skit. If you can't take a joke, keep it moving. Enjoy your day. That when you're depicting a deaf person and you're not deaf, that is you making that is about the deaf people. Are you fucking kidding me? It's not your deaf lived experience. And so Lexa said, you literally are making fun of them though. What's the picking your ear and nose in the beginning, randomly waving your hands around as if signing? Just admit you messed up, or at the very least take the vid down. It's okay to make a mistake, which this video is. And that's where Sean said, so we can't pick our nose or whatever. So now we're back in order. Okay. I was previously out of order. Now we're back in order. And then Sean said, next time I'll just make them stand there doing nothing. As if we can't do stuff? Like what? Like make us? Are you kidding me? Like, good luck finding a deaf person to be your token. I mean, there are a lot of deaf people that will tokenize us though. And so, but if he means try to represent us when he's not us, that's still discrimination against us no matter what. Like what? Like you can't impersonate being deaf. That's discrimination no matter what. And then Lexa said, or maybe don't use deaf people as a crux of any of your jokes until you understand why this is offensive. Or maybe at all ever. And Sean said, then go tell comedians not to take anyone or anything that could offend someone. And I can't read some of the other comments, but another one that Lexa, because of the captioner being in the way, but Lexa had said, but this is offending people in the deaf community. Not could, is. Is it really that hard to admit a mistake? Move on and do better. And then Papa Sean says, a few people from that community. The community is way bigger than the few that get offended. It was more than a few. I screenshotted several of us, all right, alone. But no. And then for hearing people to be like, not every deaf person is feels something is discrimination, so they're gonna try and tell deaf people how to feel about if something is discrimination, is itself discrimination through tokenizing. All right. That's discrimination against all deaf people. Anyway. And so he was basically saying, and Lexa said a few is not enough for you. And then this video only does harm, is mocking and misrepresenting the entire deaf community. Look, if you aren't going to learn, that's a shame. If you don't realize how you're in the wrong, that's sad. People have tried to educate you and you're just too proud to admit a mistake. But the deaf community is very open to people who want to learn. So maybe in the future you can do better. Clearly that day is not today. And someone else said, it doesn't matter what your post was. Numerous people, both inside and outside of the deaf community, have told you that it's offensive and wrong. If you actually didn't mean to be ableist, then you should delete it. And then Papa Sean said, like, 5 of you took it that way out of proportion, and millions who laughed because they actually saw it as just a skit and nothing more. Get off your period, bro. So misogynistic too, I see. But also, you have a hearing audience. You've got hearing people, and you are saying, oh, it's fine because all of the hearing people are discriminating with me against deaf people. So the fact that deaf people want me to stop discriminating against deaf people isn't a problem to me, because us hearing people enjoy discriminating against you is discrimination. And somebody said, maybe you missed a lesson in school when they learn numbers, but your comments to likes ratio aren't quite what it's supposed to be. And then Sean responded, did you see my TikTok? I think it's where it needs to be. So yeah, Sean's admitted several times in the comments that he cares more about engagement than about if he's discriminating or not. And I think that's interesting. But you know what? I'm gonna because you know what? No, I'm gonna say it because I think that's interesting, because we see that today too, right? People care more about if people are liking their post than whether or not their post is supporting supremacist rhetoric. I'm just saying, if we're gonna apply that to today's political violence. Anyway, so yeah, I think those are all the comments. Good enough. We know what the fuck. Close enough. Whatever. Okie dokie. Now I got one more of these fucking videos to do. So let's do this bitch. Oh, you know what? Oh, okay. This is that video. Oh, did I put it on here twice? Oh, no. This is a different one. This is a different one. Oh, okay. I apologize. All right. We're going to do one more. This may or may not sit well with some of you hearing people, but you know, I think you can see after this conversation why this video ended up being made. Just to see.
When hearing people make joking about death a trend. Hearing people, hey, yeah, let's go watch this comedy show. If you like Colleen, Ballinger, or Miranda Sings, or Shane Dawson type humor, you're gonna love this.
Okay, so this video is a matchup of the same sound being used by other creators to do that same trend, where those other videos, I was talking about one creator that was the first person I saw that got the most views that I saw from it myself. I'm not saying other people didn't do it or get more views or some shit. I'm just can only let you know what I saw in my feed. So this is a video where I when you hear that sound, it's me stitching other people doing that, right? And calling them out as well. And so I'm signing in this part of the video as a response. And so in it, I'm gonna tell you what I was signing. And so it was basically like, deaf person 1, hey, there's a shooter. Should we tell the hearing person who joked about killing deaf people? Deaf person 2, nah, they can hear them coming. This one is a similar quote unquote joke, but the other two that I had shown only mentioned being deaf. And they both talked about, oh, the deaf person during the school shooting was the idea behind the first two videos we looked at. In this third one, it's this very similar idea, except for it starts off with the deaf and blind kid, and then in it, it has an overlay that says, give him a Braille note. And Braille is spelled wrong because this person's a fucking dumbass. Also, the difference between that one and the other ones, I feel like this one more kind of shows like did a better transition with the shooting part, to be honest, but that's fucked up to say, but whatever. All right.
Deaf person.
So like a deaf person, so this one, the idea would be like, deaf person to a hearing, hey, there's a shooter here, you need to run now. But the deaf person is signing.
Hearing person. Hey.
So I did a joke where the hearing person is just standing like the Fawn. It's like, hey, and they get shot and dead. Anyway. So, but it's not so funny when we do it now, is it, bitch? Or do you not have a sense of humor? And what's so funny is Sean blocked me. He was like, get a sense of humor, but fucking blocked me for my videos. This one also specifically mentions deaf and blind, and does their Braille note 1, 2, and he spells Braille wrong too. All right, so that's ableist ass trend. Fucking. Apologies, I probably should have said that there was a flash warning. I'll try to add that in the not try to. I will add that either in the description after this, because I forgot about the whole flash thing on here. So if you needed that flash warning, apologies. Yeah.
Hey, you gotta run. That hearing person who joked about killing deaf people is trying to kill us again. I hope we all reflect here on the differences of using humor as a coping mechanism versus a defense mechanism. I wrote a list of reasons that this trend of making fun of deaf people in a shooting or dying in a shooting is bad, and I'm gonna read that to you now. It makes fun of deaf segregation. We're making fun of deaf eugenics, making fun of deaf genocide, including forced sterilization. We are making fun of police brutality and the death rates of those, the death rates of domestic abuse, the death rates of assault. We are making fun of deaf eradication, which includes our cultural eradication. We're making fun of language deprivation. You're making fun of language disfluency. You're making fun of linguistic simplification. It mocks our lived experiences and oppression, and it normalizes the idea of enjoying our genocide. Even if you don't understand the history of the eugenics and the genocide against deaf people, to put this into context of how messed up it is, you can even see we have creators putting things like "rest in peace" in the caption, and overall implying that they are killing the deaf person in this trend. A definition that Oxford Languages, as featured by Google, promotes on discrimination is the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on the grounds of ethnicity, age, sex, or disability. And deafness is both an ethnographic group and a social disability. Oxford Languages, as featured by Google, also defines ableism as discrimination in favor of able-bodied people. Merriam-Webster defines audism as discrimination or prejudice against individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. A report done within the community of Ohio shows that the deaf community is 2 to 3 times more likely to experience physical violence, sexual violence, bullying, and crime than their non-deaf, non-disabled peers. All aboard the toxic F joke train. Who gives a fuck about deaf discrimination? The toxic deaf joke train. This is my one-way ticket. I have no creation. The toxic deaf joke train. I can steamroll you like I have the numbers too. What is 15% of people gonna do? You don't survive. Joke's true, but hey, at least I'm having fun. Sometimes people discriminate and it doesn't make.
Yeah, I fucking forgot that. I just realized that this was playing, but then I was getting some text messages. But I had forgotten that this video just played that song, and I was like, whatever. I'm not gonna make us listen to that too many times because I'm probably gonna play that again. But let's see, because I think I might play this song itself one more time at the end here. We already kind of listened to most of it. At the end. At the beginning, towards the beginning, but whatever. I'm not speaking right. Towards the beginning, though, if I remember correctly, I think part of the very last segment of this song gets cut off. But whatever. Life is hard. We're going to skip forward in this video here. And then I'm going to finish this video here. And then there we go. For more context on this joke and trend in particular, I recommend looking at the jokes and the videos I did on Papa Sean 33. And the videos on that joke include when hearing people make deaf jokes 1 and 2, get called out on discrimination, apologize to deaf people, and the song. Many of the other videos I did on deafness can also give you more context onto the history and all of the background information that simply won't fit into even a 10-minute video. And that includes, there's 2 on cultural appropriation on access in society and gatekeeping sign language that explain the importance of sign language, and that will actually help you partly understand why the making fun of the deaf people linguistically was such an issue. Then the My Deaf History lessons, as well as the more videos on My Deaf History lesson, will give you more information on the history of eugenics, genocide, and how we historically in those events got to the oppression and discrimination of deaf people. I do not tolerate any type of gaslighting, sea lioning, straw man type argument, but if you do have any genuine questions about the harm of this type of normalization of our oppression, then I would love to answer those questions. Okay, so basically,
you don't have.
Oops, sorry, I accidentally hit the play on the button again. I can't remember if I remember to unmute during part of this, so it's very unfortunate if I didn't. So yeah, basically I had forgotten that in this video, so much of it, just hit play again, life is hard. that so much of it was a repeat of that song. So I wanted to skip through part of that. I'm feeling a bit, you know, when you're hyper focused on one thing and then your phone's fucking going off and then you end up in another conversation, but then you're trying to get back to what you're on. Apologies. I'm a little weird. A little? Okay, just a little. But anyway, so that kind of wraps up the video portion here for the most part. Towards the end, I'm gonna do one more playthrough of that song, I think. But that kind of wraps up that video portion here for the most part, where I was showing you that example where we are reflecting on the concept of violence and peace. We are looking at the concept of, you know, reflecting on, is violence the answer, and when is violence the answer? You know what I mean? And so this is kind of the introduction to that thought process here, looking at this situation in which a community who has experienced genocide is experiencing a social issue where people think it's hilarious to joke about us dying. So yeah, that's what we were looking at today. So now let's look at some sources on it. Let's see. So first of all, we've got some general stats on deafness. And in the stats, you know, you'll see overall a lot of different numbers in general out there about stats related to deafness, because it's hard to get an exact estimate. First of all, we only know what's reported. There are also people who are deaf or hard of hearing that may not be reported. So that's one reason these numbers change. Also, populations change each year in terms of the number of people born, the number of people who pass along, and the number of people who get diagnosed. And so that's another reason stats appear to be different over time. And then plus, different people that are measuring these stats have different methods or are looking at different parts of population. So there can be different numbers you see out there. Usually I see somewhere between 10 and 20% usually is what I see people claiming is deaf community. And so this one source I have is some general stats on deafness. And it basically just kind of says that 20% of people in the United States has some form of hearing loss. From whenever the fuck that time that was measured. I don't know. But yeah. And so some additional stats on here that I find relevant to this conversation as it relates to the violence against deaf people. Deaf children are 5 times as likely to be abused as hearing children. Deaf children are 3 times more likely to be abused in the United States. Deaf prisoners are abused at 3 times the rate of hearing prisoners. 1 in 4 deaf women are victims of domestic violence. 1 in 3 deaf women are the victims of sexual assault. 2 published statistics for abuse of girls rate between 55 and 91% of deaf girls face sexual abuse and reported the abuse. 50% of deaf children are sexually abused. 41.6% of deaf children are physically abused. 26% of deaf children are neglected. One study reported 54% of deaf boys were sexually abused, in comparison to only 10% of hearing boys. Incidence of maltreatment, including neglect and physical sexual abuse, is more than 25% higher among deaf and hard of hearing children than among hearing youths. Most abuse of deaf children occurs at home. These abuse statistics are considered to be low, as much abuse is not reported. Drugs and alcohol. 1 out of 7 deaf individuals have abused drugs and or alcohol. So yeah. And this is from gatecommunications.org. These stats. Next one. This is from The Atlantic. when police officers don't know about the ADA. In many jurisdictions, cops' noncompliance with the law has led to strain and miscommunication with the deaf community. 1 week ago, Magdio Sanchez, a deaf man, was shot and killed in front of his Oklahoma City home by police. And this article is from 2017, September. Sanchez, who often used a short metal pipe to communicate, waved it in the air after an officer arrived at his home to investigate a hit-and-run accident. According to a witness's account, the situation escalated after the officer ordered Sanchez to drop the pipe and he did not comply. Exasperated neighbors shouted that he couldn't hear the commands. "Don't kill him. He's deaf," one onlooker, a 12-year-old girl, cried out. Within moments, the witness said, a second officer appeared to provide backup, and he quickly discharged his gun. Sanchez was pronounced dead at the scene. In the days since, the Sanchez case has brought attention to calls from disability rights advocates to reform police relations with people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the government has been required to provide effective communication, reasonable accommodation, and equal access to services for those with disabilities. But almost 30 years later, law enforcement hasn't always satisfied this mandate. When it comes to the deaf community, officers' gaps in cultural competency have led to strain and miscommunication, and at times, the use of deadly force. Police compliance with ADA provisions is pretty poor across the board, said Alex Vitale, a sociology professor at Brooklyn College whose research focuses on community policing. It's clearly not a priority for a lot of police leaders. For the deaf, police compliance with the ADA translates to employing or contracting with qualified American Sign Language interpreters and making available remote interpreting services, among other measures. It's difficult to quantify how often deaf Americans are denied services, or how often their interactions with police turn sour. Since 2011, Talila Lewis has led a small band of volunteers in building a national database of deaf inmates and a log of self-reported stories from deaf people who say they've experienced police violence, wrongful arrests, and discrimination. Lewis co-founded the advocacy group, Helping Educate to Advance the Rights of the Deaf, and is an attorney and visiting professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. The log isn't comprehensive, but it provides illustrative snapshot. Sorry, I think I could make that bigger. Let's see. I should have, well, life is hard. 18-year-old Hannah Cohen, who is partially deaf and blind, tackled by Transportation Security Administration agents as she returned home from cancer treatment. Robert Kim, a deaf motorist, tasered by an officer in suburban St. Louis while he was having a diabetic episode on the side of a road. Jonathan Meister, an architect who communicates using ASL, handcuffed and tasered repeatedly after officers thought he was burglarizing a house. Advocates and academics highlight a foundational problem underlying even mildly negative encounters. Only a few municipalities have comprehensive training on deaf and hard of hearing cultural competency, said Howard Rosenblum, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of the Deaf, the oldest American deaf civil rights organization. I'm not going to go on about this right now, but they claim to be the first deaf civil rights organization, but I don't really think that they should consider themselves as such because, in my opinion, they were not there to serve deaf people. They did not allow all deaf people in. Anyway, the vast majority of law enforcement receive either no training at all or only perfunctory training. And these sessions can be the first time officers learn about the ADA. In 2016, two public health researchers in California evaluated a training workshop on domestic violence calls involving deaf and hard of hearing people. They found that few police knew about the law, including the right to an interpreter, said one of them. Alina Engelman, a health sciences professor at California State University, East Bay. In some departments, disability rights training is superseded by instruction in areas deemed more urgent. Let's see. I was going to keep reading, but honestly, I'm getting kind of bleh. And also, they use hearing impairment, that term in here. That term is considered ableism. There's nothing impaired about us. There's nothing broken about us. How can my hearing be impaired if I could have never heard? You can't break something that didn't exist. Anyway. That's like me saying I broke my Lamborghini and I never had one. I'm Lamborghini impaired. But alright. So I'm gonna keep going. We got the fucking point from this one. Let's keep going. The next one. Deaf man stabbed after sign language mistaken for gang signs. Cop says Robert Neal stabbed dead man several times with kitchen knife. And this is from 2013. A deaf man in North Carolina communicating to a friend via sign language was stabbed multiple times after he was mistaken for flashing gang signs, police said. Terrence Irvin Daniels, 45, was brutally attacked in the upper body with a kitchen knife on January 9th in Burlington, North Carolina, while he and another deaf friend were signing to each other while walking down the street. Suspect Robert Gerald Neal, 22, saw the men and mistook the sign language for gang signs, Sergeant Mark Yancey of the Burlington Police Department told ABCNews.com. An altercation ensued, and the victim was stabbed several times, Yancey said. Strangely, Yancey said, there is no evidence to indicate that Gerald was a member of a gang, and it remains unknown then why he attacked Daniels. Police would not say if the suspect is believed to have used drugs or alcohol. Daniels was taken by helicopter to the trauma center at the University of North Carolina, where he remains in stable condition. Neal fled and was later arrested by police nearby in Elon, North Carolina, Yancey said. He appeared in court on Friday and was charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, but did not enter a plea. Bond was set at $500,000. Neal will likely be represented by a public defender, but an attorney has not yet been appointed. And that was 2013. From 2017. 36 years ago, a deaf man was shot in the back by the Belleville's then police chief. This is another installment of Into the Archives, a series that looks back on stories from the Belleville News Democrat archives. The recent shooting and killing of Magdiel Sanchez, a deaf man in Oklahoma City, by police officers who didn't know Sanchez was deaf and could not respond to their commands to put down a metal pipe, has ignited a conversation about interactions between law enforcement officials and, this article says the hearing impaired, but we are deaf or hard of hearing. Hearing impaired is a slur against us and discrimination against us. So, and from now on, if y'all, from the rest of this live stream, I'm just gonna fucking say deaf. They might put hearing impaired in this article, but that's fucking ableism, and whatever. Anyway, the rest of this article says, Belleville had its own experience with this. 36 years ago, Barry Beal, who was chief of Belleville police at the time, shot Glenn Matilla, a 24-year-old, unarmed deaf man, from Rockford, Minnesota, during a drug raid at 713 East D Street in Belleville. The shooting was not fatal. The Belleville News-Democrat reported the home on East D Street had been under surveillance for several weeks as a suspected drug distribution center of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club of Oklahoma City. Mattila's father, Mervyn Mattila of Minnesota, told the BND in 1981 that Glenn Mattila was only in the house because he was invited to a party and offered a free place to sleep by John Scott Lil Wolf Killip, 31. Killip was a member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club and wanted on a warrant. On March 28, 1981, Terry Delaney, who was a zone commander for the Illinois Division of Criminal Investigation and who later also served as chief of Belleville Police, went to the front door of the home on East D Street. Delaney announced he was a law enforcement official to the occupants inside. Killip, without a shirt or shoes on, walked out the front door seconds later and surrendered. The BND published a picture of the half-naked Killip in handcuffs on the street alongside the Belleville Police Tactical Unit. Killip said to the BND in a phone interview last week, "I told them there was a deaf guy with me and the chief, Beal, was trying to break in the back door. He was trying to break a window in. They just grabbed me and threw me up against a wall. About then is when I heard the shot go off," Killip said. At a press conference after the raid, Delaney said he radioed other officers that Killip was in custody. Delaney told reporters he made the announcement because "I knew the adrenaline was pumping." When Delaney made the call, Beal, more Belleville police officers, and a federal drug enforcement agency agent had already entered through the back door of his house. Apparently, unaware that Killip had surrendered, Beal fired a warning shot into the kitchen with his shotgun. Then, Beal went to the bedroom and tried to open the door. It bounced back at him because Mattila was standing in front of it. Beal fired his 12-gauge shotgun through the door, hitting Mattila. The police chief shot him in the back, Killip said. "There was no reason for it. I'd already surrendered myself to the FBI up front." Delaney testified in a report obtained by the BND in 1991, but not released to the public at the time of the shooting, that he saw Beal drink from a bottle of Jameson Irish whiskey before the drug raid occurred. In the report, Delaney wrote, "I'm recovering alcoholic, I'm sober now, but Jameson was my shit too, man. I fucking love Jameson." Anyway, yeah, or some Tullamore Dew days. In the report, Delaney wrote, "Killip had a reputation of being very aggressive and could possibly resist arrest and even create a possible hostage situation. Beal had then stated that he would go to the back door, and if he met with resistance, he would shoot to kill." Officers seized large amounts of marijuana, not the marijuana, LSD, amphetamines, fuck the amphetamines, and a weapon in the home during the raid. On June 10, 1981, the BND reported Killip pleaded guilty to possession of LSD. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison by U.S. District Judge William Beatty. Since that time, Killip, now 67 and living in Indiana, said, "I gave my life to Christ." He founded Lil Wolf Ministries to serve the spiritual needs of the outlaws. For the last 10 years, Killip had served as the first national chaplain for the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Memories of the raid. Bruce N. Cook, the longtime Belleville attorney who represented Beal after the shooting, spoke to the BND about his memories of the drug raid in a phone conversation last week. Cook said, "It was really unfortunate. He remembered Beal didn't know Mattila was deaf until after the raid." Cook also said Barry Beal didn't aim at him. Barry didn't see him. That's even more dangerous, don't you think? According to Cook, Beal had the gun in his hands. The interior door bounced back and the gun went off. Yeah, because he pulled the fucking trigger. What Cook remembered most clearly about the shooting was meeting with Beale and Belleville's Mayor Richard Brott a few hours after the drug raid was finished. As far as Cook could remember, if the shooting was an accident, and Beale was very upset afterward. Cook added, it was an awful thing. I'm drinking white grape juice. Anyway, as far as Cook could remember, oh wait, did I just say that? Life is hard. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, it says in court, Russell Scott, who represented the city of Belleville, argued Beale heard another police officer yell, "He has a gun," and believed an armed man was behind the door before shooting Matila. Scott, when recently contacted by the BND, declined to comment. Did he decline to comment because you can't get your story straight? Or is that just me? Anyway, then after this it says, after the raid, Matila was rushed to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Belleville, where he had emergency surgery. The BND reported Matila lost a kidney, spleen, part of his pancreas, and colon because of the shooting. At the press conference in 1981, after the drug raid, a spokesperson told reporters that police officers did not know Matila was deaf until informed by emergency workers at the hospital. You know, honestly though, if it was hearing, it wouldn't fucking matter. Still would have been bad. Anyway, Glenn Matila's father, Mervyn Matila, told reporters in 1981 Glenn didn't know there was a policeman behind him. He thought the police officer in... Oh, wait, hold up, I got distracted. Oh, okay, my bad. He thought the police officer in front of him shot him. He asked, "Why did he shoot me when I had my hands up?" The shooting was investigated by the Belleville Police, the FBI, and the St. Clair County State's Attorney's Office. I don't know how to fuck say this. John Beresevic or some shit, the St. Clair County State Attorney at the time, ruled Beale did not act in a criminal manner when he shot Matila. Bullshit! The Belleville Police and the FBI never released its reports to the public. In civil court, Matila sued Beale and the city of Belleville, claiming Beale wrongly shot him in the back. In April 1991, the first civil suit ended in a mistrial. The BND reported, a witness improperly testified that Matila is receiving Social Security benefits because he is deaf. Court rules prohibit testimony regarding a plaintiff's source of income. It doesn't work that way. And even if it did, why the fuck would that matter? Anyway. Then it says the civil trial was rescheduled. In 2017, the BND discovered the documents recording the results of the second civil trial are missing from the microfilm record at the St. Clair County Courthouse. Oh, what a coincidence! Isn't there a word for when you attempt to make evidence disappear? Starts with a tamper, ends with an ing. Anyway, Matila died on January 21st, 2000 at age 43. Beale died on August 24th, 2016 at Memorial Hospital in Belleville. At the national level, unlike the police shooting in Belleville where the victim survived, miscommunications between police and deaf people have had deadly consequences in the United States. In a phone interview last week, Angela Botts, Community Outreach Coordinator at the Impact Center for Independent Living in Alton, and the chairwoman for the Illinois Statewide Deaf Services Coordinators, said her organization is working on making positive progress with law enforcement and their interactions with deaf persons. Botts said, they, the police, need to understand more about our deaf culture. They don't understand the culture and they need to learn. Despite the need, Botts said, police departments do not seek this education. Botts said, we, the Impact Centers for Independent Living, have to reach out to them. In August 2000, In Detroit, a police officer shot and killed Errol Shaw, a 39-year-old deaf man, after Shaw did not hear the officer's commands to drop a rake. Shaw's mother, Annie Shaw, testified in court that she said, "Officer, he cannot hear you. He is deaf." Annie Shaw yelled 2 more times that Errol Shaw could not hear the officer's verbal commands. The police officer shot Shaw twice in his chest and abdomen, killing him. On August 18, 2016, in Charlotte, North Carolina, a North Carolina state trooper shot and killed Daniel Harris, a 29-year-old unarmed deaf man, after Harris was pulled over for speeding. Harris could not hear the police sirens and continued to drive. According to reports, when Harris finally stopped and exited his vehicle, he was trying to communicate through sign language with the police when they shot him. On September 19th, in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, police officers shot and killed Magdiel Sanchez, a 35-year-old deaf man who was walking toward them carrying a metal pipe. The police later reported that they did not hear neighborhood witnesses shouting that Sanchez was deaf. Sanchez could not hear the officer's commands to drop the pipe. Concerning the most recent shooting of Sanchez in Oklahoma City, Botts wrote in an email to the BND that the tragedy was totally unacceptable and can be avoided. She stresses educational programs for both sides, for the deaf community and police. Botts wrote, "There should be a better model policy for law enforcement on communicating with those who are deaf. A proper ongoing curriculum to learn how to behave when a police officer approaches you, why police officers behave in certain ways, the best way to tell police officers that you are deaf, and how to improve relationships with your local police department." Honestly, I don't think that's helpful, but you know what? I'll do a different video on that one. But then it says, Botts thinks something that police officers could do right away to improve the situation is to learn basic signs. I disagree, but that's just me. Botts said if a person would point a hand to their ear, that means they're deaf. That should be a sign that the police should recognize quickly. She added, "There's a lot of services and support. At this time, the police, don't use the proper communication aids, or they ignore the request for interpreters. That is really wrong of police departments." Police training in Southwestern Illinois. David Hayes, director of the Southwestern Illinois Law Enforcement Commission, said in a phone interview that SILEC provides in-service training for 97 police agencies in 7 counties in southwestern Illinois. Though none of that whatever the fuck that thing is, I'm not doing that acronym, it's stupid. Crisis intervention team training courses address police and deaf person interactions specifically for frontline officers. Hayes said telecommunication experts, 911 operators, and crisis negotiators receive the training and equipment necessary to do the translations from deaf or just as deaf. Well, they're using the slur again because they're fucking discriminating against deaf people and they don't give a shit. Anyway, it says, we poll police agencies every year on a needs assessment survey to make sure that we meet the training needs on all topics that come into focus from year to year. He said, some of the topics, okay, I'm going to be done reading this. Instead, once I'm feeling blah, then I'm like, fuck it. But the reason, honestly, that I don't feel that training police officers on sign language is helpful is because, first of all, I think if you want to learn sign language access, it needs to be to give deaf community access. That needs to be your purpose. I don't think requiring police officers to learn sign language is going to make them treat deaf people any differently. Police officers don't believe you that you're deaf, even if you can show them your audiogram. Hearing people will not believe that you are deaf. They tell you that you are lying. That's my experience. I don't think it's helpful. And doing the whole deaf people need to learn talk to the police thing, I think that's victim blaming. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that deaf people attempting to communicate with the police is helpful. That's what gets us killed. But that's just me. Anyway, all right, moving on. So this next article, it says, the family of an autistic and deaf, I cannot pronounce this, I apologize. Cudahy? That's not right. But anyway, the family of an autistic and deaf man who was shot by an LA sheriff's deputy plans to sue. The family of an autistic and deaf man who was shot and wounded by an LA County Sheriff's deputy last week is planning to sue the county over the incident, according to the family's attorney. Relatives said 25-year-old Isaias Cervantes, so sorry if I'm saying that wrong, was unarmed, and family attorney Austin Dove said he was completely compliant when he was shot in the back in his home on March 31st. Cervantes' mother and his sister, Yahadra, I don't think I'm saying this correctly, I'm so sorry, witnessed the incident, according to Judy Mark of Disability Voices United. Cervantes is in the ICU, said his other sister, Yadira. I don't think I said that right. Is it Yajera or Yahadra? No, I'm butchering it. I apologize, ladies. Anyway, so his other sister, who added that she's worried he won't walk again. It breaks my heart, she said today at a rally outside the Hall of Justice. We're really hurt and we have a lot of anger. He was really happy, so innocent. The sheriff's department says a deputy shot Cervantes after deputies responded to a family disturbance call, and Cervantes attacked one of the deputies, gouging at his eyes while attempting to disarm him. Yeah, right. I don't know why. I know nothing about this, but why do I bet either that's a lie or they're not telling the whole story? Why do I feel like, anyway. But anyway, it says, while he's saying he doesn't yet have enough information to confirm or deny the department's version of events, Dove said what the family saw and what the deputy reported are very different. He also criticized the deputy's tactics. The deputies were told that he was autistic, told that he was deaf, told that he was unable to respond to cues like everyone else, Dove said. They get there, and within 3 minutes, he's shot in the back on the floor of his living room. The department's mental evaluation teams, which consist of a specially trained deputy and a clinical social worker, do respond to cases involving people with autism. But they were not called to respond in the Cervantes case, and it is unclear whether Patrol actually knew about the developmental disability factor. I don't like that they call autism that. Anyway, Gannon told us via email. The sheriff's department said that the body-worn cameras captured the incident on video, and the agency promised a statement to release the footage as soon as possible. Anyway, so this is from 2021. Let's look at another article. This says, family and friends seek justice after deaf father shot and killed in West Phoenix. Family and friends are asking for justice after a father and member of the deaf community was shot and killed outside of a Phoenix apartment complex. Is it just me, or are these articles literally just repeating the headline in the first sentence of the paragraph? Like, come on, guys. Let's get it together. Let's write some shit. Anyway, and then it says, it happened Monday morning near the 59th Avenue and Indian School Road. Family members say 23-year-old Gary Herrera stepped outside for a cigarette break when a car with 2 men inside pulled up. Police say a friend heard a gunshot and the car fled. Herrera was taken to an area hospital but died shortly after. He was an amazing father, said Angelica Sanchez, who has a 3-year-old son with Herrera. Hurt, shocked, I have no words, Jill Queel, who says she helped raise Herrera, said. Loved ones held a car wash on Saturday to raise money for funeral funds. They're asking for whoever is responsible to come forward and turn themselves into the police. Whoever has seen something, you know what happened, Keel said. Please speak about it. Please, we need justice for Gary. Phoenix police say they're looking for an older model Ford sedan with faded red paint. I don't like that they're blaming 2 black men. but I mean, I don't know if they did it or not, but whatever. Anyway, and then here we've got a little video, an article, but I'm not going to play the video. But this is from Daily Moth. It says 10 years ago, deaf Native American woodcarver shot and killed by Seattle police officer. So it's from 2020. Well, the article is from 2020. It's about something that happened in 2010. But anyway, on Sunday, August 30th, deaf Meswaki, I am so sorry if I said that wrong, activist Sarah Young Bear Brown tweeted a tribute to John T. Williams, who was a deaf Native American woodcarver that was shot and killed 10 years ago by a Seattle police officer after he walked across the street holding a piece of wood and a carving knife. The tweet quote from Sarah Young Bear. On August 30th, 2010, John T. Williams, a deaf Native American woodcarver, was walking across the street carrying his carving knife and a small piece of wood when he was shot 4 times by Officer Ian Burke of the Seattle Police Department. No justice for John T. Williams. A Seattle magazine, Seattle Met, did a feature on John T. Williams in honor of him on the 10-year anniversary of his death. The author did an interview with John T. Williams' brother, Rick. The article said John T. Williams was deaf in one ear and was losing his eyesight. He was a member of the Deduct tribe. I am so sorry if I said that wrong. His family were skilled woodcarvers and sold totems around Seattle since 1909, passing down their carving skills. There is no indication that Williams was a signing deaf person, but he had deafness. He was deaf. I'm deaf. I'm hard of hearing. The incident on August 30th, 2010, just after 4 p.m., Williams was walking across a street in front of a police cruiser driven by Officer Ian Burke of the Seattle Police Department. There is a dash cam video that shows Williams walking across the street and the police officer walking out of the car, but the video doesn't show the shooting. So we can see that Williams was carving a piece of wood while going across the street, and he didn't look like he was threatening anyone. The article said the officer shouted, "Hey, hey, hey, put the knife down, put the knife down, put the knife down," and then there are 5 gunshots. Burke said later in the video in a conversation with another officer that Williams had the knife open and kind of turned towards me. Are you fucking kidding me? There was an inquest a few months later, which is a judicial process to investigate and review a person's death. 7 out of 8 jurors said Williams posed no imminent danger. The King County prosecutor decided not to file any charges against Officer Burke because state law at the time required proof that an officer showed evil intent. The Seattle Police Department said Burke's use of force was unjustified and Burke resigned on that day. There were protests. In 2011, the city of Seattle paid Williams' family a $1.5 million settlement. In 2012, a 34-foot high totem pole was erected at the Seattle Center for the Space Needle is located at to honor John T. Williams. Today on the site where Williams died, there are 3 white deer painted on a crosswalk. The intersection is Howell and Boren. There is a plaque that honors John T. Williams. So that's what happened 10 years ago. As deaf Indigenous people, we experience a double genocide. So that one's hard for me. For any deaf person or for any Indigenous person, it's always hard. But when you know that someone put so much work into their cultural revitalization and rejuvenation and maintaining their culture as an Indigenous person, for them to be shot and killed by the police, by the colonizers, that is evil intent. What the fuck you mean there was no evil intent? This is evil. I want to keep going through these articles, but before I do, I want to take a moment to honor our deaf and Indigenous relatives. And, yeah. Fawn Wood has the song Remember Me. And if I remember correctly, I think other members of her family were involved as well in writing that song. If I remember correctly, I believe that may be a family written song of Fawn Wood and Tia Wood's family. I might be wrong, but the song we know from Fawn Wood, Remember Me, is often used to spread awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous people, particularly missing and murdered Indigenous women. Yeah, I'm thinking of that song now. Okay, so let's keep going. This next article. Deaf man fatally shot by North Carolina trooper mourned at memorial service. A deaf man who was fatally shot by North Carolina state trooper last week was mourned at a memorial service Tuesday as authorities urged people not to jump to conclusions while the incident is being investigated. Daniel Harris, 29, died last Thursday after he failed to move to the side of a highway when trooper Jermaine Saunders was trying to pull him over for speeding, the Associated Press reported. It's unclear what led the officer to fire off one fatal shot after the police chase ended near Harris's home, but the deaf man's family said he likely didn't understand what the officer was saying. Daniel's death is just a shock. What is it for? It's definitely worthy. It has value, and I'm angry about it, Sam Harris said Tuesday at his brother's memorial service, according to NBC News. Sam Harris is also deaf, as are his parents, and communicated his thoughts to mourners using sign language. You know, that night he was driving home. He was excited. He had a new job, and he had died just a few yards from home, Sam Harris added. Harris's family said Harris was unarmed at the time of the fatal police shooting. They are working to set up a foundation to honor Harris and help law enforcement agencies train on how to confront deaf people, according to an online fundraising page the family set up. The family also wants states to set up a system that alerts law enforcement officers to deaf drivers. I don't think that's a good idea. With this change, Daniel will be a hero in our deaf community. I don't think that change needs to be happening. He already is a hero. But anyway, more than 650 people had donated more than $28,000 to the Harris's family as of Wednesday. You don't see deafness the way that you see the difference in race. We need to change the system, Sam Harris said Monday after a community vigil, according to the AP. Harris, a Massachusetts native, I don't know, unless he was indigenous, I wouldn't call him native. I'm just saying. Was a computer and gaming whiz who loved playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And okay, blah, blah, blah. Alright, no, that sounded rude. That sounded rude. Not blah, blah, blah. His life mattered, and who he was mattered, and what he enjoyed doing did matter. I apologize. That sounded dismissive and rude. The rest of this goes into more about who he was and memorializing Daniel. I am becoming and feeling desensitized, which is not a good thing, to covering these issues and trying to get through my coverage of it. So, apologies how that was. But we're going to go to the next article now for the sake of getting this video along. So, next up, it says deaf woman says she was almost shot after sign language confused for gang signs. It says a deaf woman has claimed online that she was almost shot after a man mistook her use of American Sign Language for gang signs, with the video amassing over 2 million views and highlighting concerns over awareness. Destiny Dutton was out with friends, who are also deaf, when a man allegedly approached the group and flashed a gun, accusing them of using gang signs. ASL is the used communication form by those who are deaf, but multiple incidents in previous years have resulted in life-threatening or fatal outcomes after I'm burping, I apologize. After confusion for gang signs. This says who are deaf and hard of hearing. I just say who are deaf because I'm hard of hearing and I'm deaf. Why am I hard of hearing? I have deafness. I'm deaf. I am a mixed woman. I am mixed white and native descent. If someone says I'm white, yeah, I am. But yeah, so I just say, I just use deafness. I feel like the distinguishment of deaf and hard of hearing does matter to a point, because what type of deaf are you? Like the degree of your deafness can matter when it comes to understanding how to communicate with someone and what is someone experiencing. But when it comes to a division between deaf and hard of hearing in terms of how deaf are you to be qualified as deaf, I don't agree with that. The same way I don't agree with using blood quantum against indigenous mixed descent people. Personally, but that's just me. But anyway, okay. So, the rest of this says, Dutton shared a video on TikTok on October 1st telling the anecdote from 4 years ago, saying, "Me and my deaf friends, we went out to a party. Of course, we were having a good time and we were lit, and then I remembered that the party was over. We walked outside. We talked about where we want to go eat. I remember this guy walked over to us. He was like, 'Are you throwing a gang sign? Where are you from? What's your set?' And I was like, 'Whoa, we are deaf and we are using ASL,' she added. Dutton claimed the man simply laughed and told the group that he didn't believe them. My friend was like, 'We are deaf. We are just using ASL. This is our language.' That guy was still laughing, and then he actually had the nerve to pull out a gun and point it to all of us. Of course, that moment, it made me so angry," she said, pausing to take a breather while explaining. According to Dutton, the man didn't shoot them after saying he didn't have time for this, but remained adamant that they had not been using ASL. "I know that y'all been throwing up gang sign," he allegedly said before walking away. "I was so scared. I was so relieved, but I was so angry because I never thought this would happen to me," Dutton told Newsweek. "It never happened to me and my friends before, but I heard so many stories about deaf people getting killed for using ASL." And then there's a full video linked as well. And you can find her on TikTok, on Instagram to see her story. But yeah, and then in here is, goes into some of these other discussions that we've been mentioning. It says, Dutton's anecdote isn't far from previous incidents over the mistaken use of ASL for gang signs. In 2013, 45-year-old Terrence Irvin Daniels was brutally stabbed multiple times in the upper body in North Carolina while using ASL to communicate with another deaf friend in the street. Police said that the sign language had been misinterpreted as gang signs. In 2011, 2 deaf Florida men were stabbed in a beach bar after another customer mistook their sign language for gang signs. A woman reportedly became angry after believing the group, who were all deaf, were throwing gang signs at her. "I just feel like everyone should know basic ASL," said Dutton. "Sadly, there's so many deaf people out there got killed over using ASL. It was at bars, schools, and neighborhoods. I don't want to hear another story of deaf person getting killed for this. I'm tired of hearing it. It's not fair to deaf community." Dutton's video has highlighted the lack of awareness of ASL for many viewers, leading to demands the language be taught as a requirement in schools. "This is exactly why ASL should be a requirement in schools. I'm so sorry that happened to you guys," wrote one user. "This is why American Sign Language needs to be required. This should not be happening," added another. Although college and high schools in some state recognize ASL as a foreign language that can, why is it foreign though? You know what? If American Sign Language is a foreign language, then are Americans finally admitting that America is foreign to this land? They need to get the fuck out. You want to be all against this illegal ICE shit, but you're the foreigner, bitch. Anyway, okay, apologies. We're gonna keep simmer down. It says, although colleges and high schools in some states recognize ASL as a foreign language, oh, I was already there, that can earn academic credit, lessons and courses are not mandatory. I just feel like American Sign Language should be taught in schools. American Sign Language is the third most studied language. I don't understand why it's not available in all schools. This needs to change, said Dutton. So yeah. And then in New Orleans too, there can be a lot of these types of situations where if you haven't been in a situation like this, or in a city or an environment where this can occur, it doesn't seem real to you almost, right? And because like I moved from Alabama and Mississippi to New Orleans, and yes, there's guns in the fucking Mississippi, Alabama. Yes, I was always surrounded by guns, but it was different. The way that you are surrounded by guns in the country, Mississippi, Alabama, versus the way you're surrounded by guns in the city in New Orleans is two completely different energy, two completely different cultures, completely different worlds, okay? Deep South, everybody's fucking got a gun, but you know they all got guns. They're waving those guns around. They're like, here's my gun, let's go shoot. You want to go shoot some beer cans off my back porch? Like, you know what I mean? But in New Orleans, it's like you can always almost assume not everybody has a gun. You can basically assume some people are going to have guns because it is common to have guns, but not everybody has a gun. But there is a huge gun violence culture here, and it's not like a let's go shoot some deer type of gun. It's like let's go hit some licks type of gun, quote unquote. Not to culturally appropriate that language. I apologize. I don't know if that was because you know how like you grow up not understanding that certain terms are cultural appropriation. You know, culture that's not yours, right? Such as the term hitting licks. I grew up hearing it, not knowing better than repeating it. Now it's one of my things where it's like, okay, wait, hold up, I know better, gotta do better. But then when you eradicating it from my vocabulary. But anyway, so it's completely different environments. And when I went from Mississippi to New Orleans, it almost didn't feel real the way people would talk to me about gun violence here, because I was not used to being around guns in this way. But the story, all of this to say that the story Destiny is describing, some shit like that, very common in New Orleans. The way that behavior would have happened with guns, where someone's like laughing about it, probably gonna like have a gun in your face, like, yeah, I'm thinking about killing you. That's common, like in this city. Like, don't be surprised. Like, I don't know. So I know that in the article it says alleged because the person, like, legally the person that wrote it probably had to, but whatever, blah blah blah. But like, I don't know, I fucking believe that shit. Anyway, moving on. I accidentally hit the wrong button. So this next article says, deaf father of two found shot, killed inside vehicle in New Orleans East. And this is from 2021. New Orleans police are investigating a homicide Sunday afternoon after a 33-year-old man was shot and killed in the 6800 block of East Coronet Court. The New Orleans Police Department said the man suffering from gunshot wounds was found inside a vehicle at 12:55 p.m. and paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. Linda Salisbury identified the victim as her nephew, Jamal Sears, at the scene. Sears was a father of two who had never been in trouble, Salisbury said. He was deaf, along with his grade school-age son, Ronnie. As of roughly 2 p.m., Police were waiting on a sign language interpreter to arrive in order to communicate with Ronnie and Ronnie's girlfriend, who was also deaf, according to Salisbury. Lowell Williamson, Sears' friend, watched the scene and videoed from behind the caution tape as he saw authorities take Sears away. "He ain't deserved that," Williamson said, adding that he just talked on the phone with Sears yesterday. "One day we're here, next day we're gone," Williamson said. Next article. Mystery surrounds the deadly shooting of a deaf man found in his SUV. The discovery of a man shot and killed in an SUV stopped on a Jackson roadway in the 12th homicide of the year. For those who knew and loved Raphael Thompson, his murder is a shocking mystery. "He was just part of our Goodwill family, and we miss him deeply," said Goodwill Industries president and CEO David Hollingsworth. Okay. 27-year-old Raphael Thompson was considered a good soul by co-workers at Goodwill Industries, where he prepared donated items for shipment to developing countries. There's some issues with the wording in here, but you know what? It's written from Jackson, Mississippi, so that explains it. I was born in Meridian, Mississippi, so I can say that. Well, I lived in York, Alabama when I was born, but the closest hospital was in Meridian. So they had, twins. But I was born in Meridian at Rush General. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Tuesday night, he was found in the driver's seat of his SUV on University Boulevard. According to Hinds County Coroner Sharon Grisham Stewart, he was shot in the head and chest. It was devastating news for those who worked with him at the Jackson location off Robinson Road. Raphael bought a brand new vehicle and drove one of our employees to work every day, and he was especially upset, said Hollingsworth. Thompson was deaf and had attended the Mississippi School for the Deaf and Hinds Community College. "It's people like Raphael that perhaps might have difficulty finding work," added Hollingsworth. "Goodwill offered a hand up to help those people with disabilities perhaps gain employment." Goodwill began a sign language program to better communicate with the Louisville native, and because of their fondness for him. I hate how people keep calling people native if they're not, but they don't specify if they're actually indigenous or not. Because if you're not actually native or indigenous, then you're not actually native. You know what I mean? Anyway. But what did I say? Okay. Many participated in the program, from the president and CEO to the program manager, store manager, and other workers. There are about 35 employees at the Jackson location, where Thompson worked for about a year. Jackson police have no suspects. Here's another one. Partially deaf, blind man, likely unaware he was getting robbed before he was fatally shot, says family. And where is this from? 2023. Alma Velez has spent her life building memories on Normandy Avenue in South Los Angeles. Her childhood home sits along that street, and the home she eventually made her own is right next to it. However, everything changed on the afternoon of April 15th. Normandy Avenue is now also the place where Alma's father, Feliciano Velez, was killed. "If my dad would have died of health problems, we probably would have said, okay, it was time. But when it happens like this," said Velez, who shook her head in disappointment. Alma said her father had diabetes and was practically deaf in his right ear and blind in his left eye. An initial report from the Los Angeles Police Department said Feliciano was shot on the sidewalk near his home when a fight escalated. But there wasn't a fight, the victim's family said. "The way his life was taken, it's what hurts the most," said Alma. Feliciano's family told ABC7 they believed the incident was a robbery gone wrong, and that Feliciano likely didn't understand what the suspect wanted or was doing due. It says visual and hearing impairment, but that's fucking ableism. Due to being deaf and blind, bitches. Fuck y'all. Anyway. The suspect eventually pulled out a gun and fatally shot Feliciano, police said. The person who killed him stole the only thing that is irreplaceable. I hope he regrets. I hope he has time to analyze what he did to the family, said Alma, the suspect. A suspect was arrested shortly after the shooting and was later booked, the family said. Police said the incident is still under investigation. Meanwhile, Alma hopes a conviction will eventually bring her family closure so they can celebrate the Feliciano he lived. I read the words correctly, I think, that is written here, but I don't feel like that sounded right. Then it says Alma and her siblings will say one last goodbye to their father at his funeral scheduled for Friday night. And then it shows I've got more stats. Now we're moving out of the articles here on all of the deaf people dying that I had compiled. But here's another one that's kind of some stats about deafness. Previously, I had discussed how there's different information out there about deafness, but in this stat from the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, from the National Health, whatever the fuck thing, it said approximately 15% of American adults, about 37.5 million, ages 18 and over, report some trouble hearing. So whenever I was talking about 15% to that Sean dude in this, the earlier videos of this stream, that's where I was getting that number from. You know what I'm saying? Alrighty. Fuck it. I think I am gonna read this. I wasn't gonna. Now I'm zooming this shit in, but you know what? Now it makes it easier. So, okay. So now we're gonna read "Genocide and Deafness" by Stephen Baldwin. Genocide is a combination of a Greek word that means tribe and killing. During the Nuremberg trials after World War II, genocide was taken seriously by the newly formed United Nations. Although the word Holocaust is popularly used to refer to nearly 6 million European Jews who were systematically killed by the Nazi regime, the word genocide will be used in this article to refer to the extermination or mistreatment of deaf people. Genocide can come in different forms. The extermination of a minority in our persecuting society is done by killing. Another part of the physical aspect of a genocide is voluntary or mandatory sterilization or castration. The non-physical form can entail a cultural or spiritual deprivation. The American Indians' loss of their culture is an example of a non-physical form of genocide. I wonder, but also we experience all forms of genocide. But you know what? I'm not going to get on there, but fuck it. Historically speaking, ancient Greeks and Romans practiced infanticide on babies that were born deformed. It was an ancient custom to let the babies die on the mountains since Spartan bodies were needed for a military-oriented society. Knowing well that deaf babies have an invisible handicap, it is assumed that they escaped death in the ancient ages. During the early Christian period, life was different for the deaf. And again, this article is from the white supremacist perspective. I have different videos on how I feel from my father's family, from what I've been taught about how deaf people were treated in the American indigenous way. And again, my dad is Powhatan descent. Powhatan. Alright. It should be pointed out that deaf or disabled or handicapped babies were considered by such church fathers as St. Augustine as crippled children who were carrying the sins of their parents, and thus could not be saved for salvation. This was a spiritual kind of genocide until St. Francis de Sales baptized the first deaf person in Spain around 1550 AD. The first recorded attempt to sterilize the deaf took place in America in the late 19th century. In 1883, Alexander Graham Bell presented his controversial paper called Deaf Variety of the Human Race. Bell was concerned that marriages between deaf people would only produce more deaf people, thus a need to ban such intermarriages. Bell, an influential man with political and financial connections, nearly succeeded in having a law passed to ban deaf marriages. The telephone inventor was thwarted in his efforts by leading deaf and hearing educators, the National Association of the Deaf, and ironically, his own Volta Bureau, which did not support his deaf race theory. Undaunted by his lack of support, Bell went a step further by proposing a possible sterilization program that never materialized. Bell's deaf wife, Mabel Hubbard Bell, may have put her overzealous husband in his place. I doubt that. Alexander Graham Bell had a deaf wife and a deaf mother, but he was still ableist and autist as shit. I'm assuming he's got other mommy issues and he's taking it out on deaf people, but that's just me self-projecting. Anyway, but Bell did succeed in perpetuating a partial cultural genocide. Laws are passed across the country that would ban the deaf from teaching the deaf. Bell said that 1/3 of the teachers in schools for the deaf were deaf themselves. His crusade against the employment of deaf teachers brought the figures down to an all-time low of 13% in 1920. Oralism is another form of cultural genocide. Ever since Samuel Heineck started the first oral school in Germany in 1755, the deaf were told not to sign since it was ugly and contrary to the wishes of the oral hearing majority. Like Heineck. Is it Heineke or just Heineck? I don't fucking know, man. Heineke makes me think of beer. Anyway. So, like that dude, Bell and other oral educators have tried in vain to suppress the deaf community. There are still a few die-hard oralists, hearing or deaf, who oppose the existence of the deaf community. The age-old oral and total communication controversy may have been revived by Marlee Matlin's oral presentation at the Oscars recently. The deaf German genocide of the Nazi period is a sad record to behold. The recent winter issue of the Gazette Today has an excellent cover story entitled "The Holocaust: Deaf Victims, Deaf Survivors." According to this magazine, 1,600 deaf Germans were murdered because they were useless eaters. Wow. Furthermore, 17,000 deaf Germans were sterilized either by volunteering or by force. It should be understood that the Aryan supremacy of Hitler and the Nazi government aimed to purify the fatherland. Hartmut Tieber, a deaf German native, now residing in Massachusetts, was 4 years old when World War II ended. He recalls from the stories of many surviving fellow Germans before he emigrated to America that they were forced through the sterilization programs, forced to have abortions, and denied marriage licenses. And we can see how this all happened in deaf and disabled community anyway. But some deaf did go along with the Nazi ideals by reorganizing their clubs into the Nazi image. For example, Rick's Federation of the Deaf. Yes, and again, I've got other live streams. The deaf community is not excluded from participating in white supremacy, no. Anyway, Cheever also reports that teachers of the deaf in Germany told all the students that they must agree to the national aim of a pure Aryan nation by sterilizing themselves. At that time, Cheever attempted a Catholic school where resistance by the nuns against the Nazis was not unusual. Those nuns often sabotaged the efforts to exterminate the deaf population. As strange as it sounds, the nuns also advised the deaf Germans to live together, not marry for the sake of survival or to avoid sterilization programs. Tieber also mentions that the deaf kept low profiles and kept away from the scene of trouble, Thus, the sterilization program was not completely successful. Tuber estimates that 10% of the deaf were sterilized before the war ended. According to Tuber, the deaf Jews received most of the suffering. Those who survived the genocide either escaped before 1936 or during the end of the war. Among those are David Bloch and Eugene Bergman, two famous deaf German Americans in the arts and literature. In closing, Tuber says it is ironic that 300 deaf members of a German organization joined the army and got killed in the first day of the Battle of Berlin in the closing days of the war. I want to pause here. This is all about German right here, where we're talking about for the American, what was happening in America at this time. Check my deaf history lesson for that shit. And that timeline is there. Anyway, because it's connected, but it's also different. And I also did a live stream on the first deaf person elected to German parliament, and I think that one could also be relevant too. Anyway, then it says, it was reported in the silent news that a parliamentary session at Bonn recently concluded a 15-month hearing of one of the last major Nazi crimes. 2 doctors were sentenced to 4 years in prison for killing more than 15,000 physically and mentally. I don't like saying physically and mentally impaired people, but that's what's in here. I think that's ableism. I was just reading and then realized what I read. Among those killed were a number of deaf Jews. Many deaf Germans were victims of Nazi euthanasia measures, and the Bonn government is compensating the victims. Whether genocide of the deaf has ceased or not cannot be determined. It has been documented that genocides took place in Cambodia and are taking place in Ethiopia, Iran, Lebanon, and Nigeria. It is often said that persecution occurs when the government cannot suppress a certain segment of its population. Sometimes those persecuting governments have no sensible reasons at all to initiate a genocide. Dr. Eugene Bergman, assistant professor of English at Guyana University and one of the relatively few survivors, says that he still doesn't understand the Holocaust. Bergman, Bloch, and Tuber are living reminders that we should not take life for granted. Yeah. And this was written in 1988. It doesn't even take into the Palestine genocide's not mentioned at all here. But anyway. And so next 2 sources I have out of order here. I feel like it would probably be better to put the memoir first, but whatever. So in the memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race that was published 1883, and that's this guy right here. In this memoir, where is it? I thought I had a cover page here. Life is hard. In this memoir, Alexander Graham Bell was basically trying to convince deaf people that deaf people do not need to intermarry. Apologies. I'm busy. I just want to finish this because I'm not going to get done if I don't. Sorry. Fucking, I don't like being interrupted. So Alexander Graham Bell had basically written this memoir where he was trying to convince deaf people that he was trying to convince not only deaf people but the entire world that deaf people should not be getting married, that deaf people getting married or having kids would be terrible for the world, and that we should stop existing, was the whole point of this book, and I did a reading of it. And then after he published that book, Alexander Graham Bell gave a speech where he was like, I know that some idea has gone forth that I don't want you guys to get married, but that's not truth. Your guys made that up. You know what I'm saying? So, and then he tokenized the woman, saying, and besides, I have a deaf mom and a deaf wife, so that's not true, even though it is true, and he did make this book. So he's basically, you know what I'm saying? Like he not only published that book, he gave a speech on it in 2 different locations, and then is trying to deny he ever did that. So yeah. And he submitted this book to the National Academy of Sciences. So that's relevant because based on the response, the typical response of hearing people is this when we call them out in discrimination. It's this. And then I've got another report on interpersonal violence exposure and violence myth acceptance in the Ohio deaf community. And I just want to, we're not going to obviously read this whole thing, but I just want to read, I think we're just going to do the introduction. Let's just read this introduction real quick. Interpersonal violence is a leading cause of death and a prevalent public health issue in the United States, affecting millions of individuals each year. Those with disabilities are more greatly impacted, with higher rates of exposure to interpersonal violence and neglect than their non-disabled peers. One unique subpopulation of individuals with disabilities, the deaf community, is 2 to 3 times more likely to experience physical violence, sexual violence, bullying, and crime than their non-deaf, non-disabled peers. One factor that many contribute to deaf people's increased exposure to interpersonal violence is a limited understanding of healthy relationship dynamics and non-violent sexual relations. These commonly observed health literacy gaps are primarily caused by lack of health education available in American Sign Language, as well as reduced incidental learning throughout deaf people's lifespans. For example, an inability to communicate with hearing parents, hearing healthcare providers, or understand spoken health information on TV, radio, public service announcements. Stemming from such information deprivation, literature suggests that deaf individuals are more likely than hearing peers to possess beliefs that align with common rape myths. For example, a specific set of attitudes and beliefs that may contribute to ongoing sexual violence by shifting blame for sexual assault from perpetrators to victims. Compared to rates of rape myth acceptance among hearing individuals, a greater proportion of deaf people believe that people falsely report rape in order to draw attention to themselves, that sex within a romantic relationship is one's obligation, and sexual coercion perpetrated by one's partner is not rape, and that experiences of sexual violence are better classified as miscommunication or bad sex rather than rape or sexual assault. Although some empirical evidence exists to substantiate deaf people's health disparities in interpersonal violence exposure and violence myth acceptance, most prior research on these topics was conducted with college student samples using written English survey measures. This may be a significant methodological limitation given deaf people's median 4th grade reading level. Even research efforts that have evolved to data collection via ASL surveys have largely been conducted in the Rochester, New York metropolitan area, where high levels of educational attainment fail to mirror the characteristics of the deaf community at large, and the resulting data, therefore, likely underestimate report health disparities. To address these limitations, the current secondary analysis leveraged data collected via an ASL survey instrument across a statewide population of hearing individuals and grassroots deaf individuals in Ohio. We hypothesize that deaf participants would report higher rates of interpersonal violence exposure than hearing participants, and that deaf participants would be more likely to endorse common violence myths than hearing participants. So basically, I feel like this article is very hearing centered, very victim blaming, and lacks deaf perspective and the nuance of these deaf issues with a lot of its wordings. So, for example, where it talks about the deaf people being unable to communicate, deaf people work harder than anybody to communicate. It's hearing people that don't put any effort into communicating with us. You know what I'm saying? So we've looked at the history of how they deprived us of sign language access. They deprive us of accessibility in education and in the workplace. They make it so that we're not able to get educated, and then they blame us for it with the wording. They don't say hearing people, they don't talk about how hearing people kept us from learning. They just act like we don't know. You know what I'm saying? They're leaving out the problem, hearing people. Now, it is true that deaf people as a community are behind the hearing community when it comes to information and social progress, but that is because the hearing people deprives us of language and doesn't make this information available to us. When it comes to the deaf community having these issues, when it comes to sexual assault, a lot of that is because some deaf community doesn't want to admit what is happening, or it's not necessarily that they don't want to admit it, but they haven't processed it yet, so they can't admit it because they haven't understood it yet, that what they're going through or what they have gone through is sexual assault. Or if they admit that something is sexual assault, they would have to realize that they've been assaulted, or that they have been complicit in supporting assault. And so a lot of people aren't ready, whether you're deaf or hearing, to address that. And then deaf community, as we've seen in the reports, from what is reported, report more assault than hearing community. And so, I don't know, when you look at that, and you look at it together, I think it's because deaf community can be so isolated, because we have been historically segregated from the hearing community since colonialism. I think that because deaf people end up isolated, when you're only surrounded by people repeating certain things around you, it becomes an echo chamber, you know? And so, yeah. But that also explains why a lot of deaf people don't end up getting the help they need, and why issues get underreported too. But anyway, we're going to look at a quick little definition of autism as it reflects to some of the prior videos we looked at. And that definition is discrimination or prejudice against individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Let's see, it doesn't really give us another or a better one, but you know, life is hard. And I had discussed that in my previous videos. So yeah, wrapping up, I feel like I was already, you know, because it's the end of my work week, it's the end of my work day, so I'm already like mentally crashing. This airplane's coming down. But I don't know if that's appropriate to say, but you know what? I said it. We're here now. And then when my person knocked on the door, it's not that I don't want to go talk to them, but it's like if my focus went over there, it would be so much harder to get back here and to actually end this. And I just felt like I was so close to getting this done that I didn't want to do that, because that would make it even harder for me to end this, and I just wanted to get this done. So I'll go apologize to him and all those things in a minute. But yes, so in conclusion, this is part of an ongoing reflection that I'm going to do regarding political violence, keeping the peace, and marinating on, is violence the answer in relation to political conflict? So these issues mean a lot to me because they impact me directly, But also, I feel that even if these issues do not impact you, they should still be important because you should care about how the community you are in influences the people in it, right? Um, and that's something that I struggle with in our community. I get being self-absorbed because I'm a self-absorbed person, but I don't understand. Like, I understand being ignorant due to self-absorption, but I don't understand doubling down. You know. And I'm noticing a lot when it comes to political conflicts and these discussion of violence that a lot of the people who claim to be anti-violent are 100% okay with violence being committed against marginalized communities, but they're just against violence when it's done back to them. So, yeah. I feel like I need to process more on this to better communicate it all, to better bring it all together. So this is just the first kind of initial video of some processing. We're going to discuss all of this more as we continue, but I wanted to use deaf community during deaf awareness and kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, with this video, you know, because I wanted to do something for deaf awareness and I wanted to do something about political violence, and so in this way I was able to do both. So we're using deaf issues as a case study to reflect on keeping the peace on political conflict and is violence the answer. So think about what that answer means for you. What I'm gonna do is play this little video, and then I'm just gonna go right on into my outro and finish this bitch. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing evening.
I'm sorry, deaf people. Oh, I am for real. I'm still laughing about how you die. I apologized a million times. What else should I be? All apologies. What jokes could I say? I want my lights to stay. What else could I write? Plus I stole that shine. What else should I be? All apologies. All aboard the toxic F-joke train. Who gives a fuck about deaf discrimination? The toxic deaf joke train. This is my one-way ticket. I have no creation. The toxic deaf joke train. I can steamroll you like I have the numbers too. What is 15% of people gonna do? You don't survive. Joke's true, but hey, at least I'm having fun. Sometimes people discriminate and it doesn't make them a horrible person. Whoa. Sometimes people can discriminate and they're still a good person. Ask me, I know. Sometimes people can discriminate and you don't have to take discrimination and act like people who can't take a fucking joke about genocide. It is just your lives. Joke's on you guys. I'm a sensation. Sometimes people can discriminate. It doesn't mean that was an act of hate. Oh no. Sometimes people can discriminate and you can fucking let it go, 'cause we don't care so. Sometimes people discriminate simply because they discriminate, and that doesn't make them a terrible human. It just makes them human. But what do the deaf know? Fuck me, right?
Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.